Good evening. Welcome to WSBI, your resource for success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring women-owned businesses from across the country. And now, for your host, Kimberly McElmore.
All right. Hello, and welcome to another night of sharing. With us, we have Annetta Benjamin, founder and owner of Benjamin Counseling Center, LLC. Welcome, Annetta.
Hi, Kimberly. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing this evening?
I'm wonderful. I'm glad to be speaking with you today.
Well, we have been putting this on. It's been on the calendar for quite some time. So this has been something that's been in the making, and I have been ecstatic about having the opportunity to talk to you. I've learned so much about you with our wonderful relationship that we have in the Zumba world, which we'll talk a little bit about later. So I'm excited about this opportunity to learn a little more about you and what you do. But before we actually get started with this awesome interview, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Like you said, my name is Annetta Benjamin, and I'm actually a therapist with Benjamin Counseling Center. And I've been in practice now for 7 years, and I have an office here in Woodbridge, Virginia. And I work with a variety of people, kids, adults, couples, families. And we kind of work with them regarding issues of anxiety, depression, bipolar, ADHD, stress issues, spiritual concerns, so a whole gambit of issues.
Okay, so we got a real quick synopsis of that, but what I want you to tell me about who you really are. Tell me where you're from. Tell me how you got started in this, and let's talk a little bit about also what inspired you to get started in this.
Okay, well, I'm originally from Virginia, born and raised Fort Belvoir, and my parents are from Antigua, which is in the Caribbean. So my mother joined the Army, and we've been living in Virginia ever since.
Wow.
But
okay.
Yeah, and I have 2 sisters or twins, and they're locally in the area too. And I have a son who's getting ready to turn 10 years old. And he and I are just taking on the world together. But from a young age, I've always kind of wanted to help people. And I kind of got into the field just by happenstance, where one of my undergrad professors just shared that, hey, we do have a counseling program at Marymount that, kind of offers spiritual care. And that was something I was really interested in. So I decided that I would pursue that.
Okay. So you weren't one of these individuals who just like one day say, this is really what I want to do. This is how I want to do it. And I'm just jumping into it. So I kind of want to backtrack a little bit because, you said you're originally from this area. Well, yeah, you are originally from this area, after, with your family being in the military and so forth. So you end up staying. But you also have a little bit more about yourself as far as with the basketball and everything, because I have been completely amazed. Every time I see you, I'm learning something new about you. So talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, kind of to dig even deeper, basketball is like my first love. I originally actually wanted to be a track star. I remember being in elementary school, and I was one of the fastest girls. And then I hit middle school, and a girl beat me, and I thought, okay, this sport is not for me anymore. A neighbor, yeah. Then my next door neighbor saw me outside dribbling a basketball one day. I had to be maybe 11 years old, and she was like, well, why don't you come over here and I'll show you a few moves? And I was like, okay. And then next, every day we were outside kind of practicing. And she said, you know what, I think you should attend a basketball camp. And at that time I was in elementary school getting ready to go into middle school. And I tried out for the Hayfield basketball camp, and I got in. And the next thing you know, I got a couple awards for like most improved and best hustler. So I thought, this is great. I like getting awards and trophies, and the sport seems pretty fun. Mm-hmm. So after a couple years of doing basketball camps, I tried out for the girls freshman team, and I made it. And then that next year I did AAU, which is like a travel basketball. And after doing that, our team actually were Virginia State champs. And so the next year they put me on varsity at the high school, and I played for the next couple of years and went to college out in Pittsburgh and had a small D2 basketball scholarship with that. And it was great for a while, but then I experienced some challenges with some of the teammates and ended up transferring to Marymount. And I remember that being one of my toughest decisions because I really was conflicted with leaving the school I started with. But I ended up transferring, and that year we went to the Final Four at Marymount, which was back in 2002. And it was great. I did 2.5 years at Marymount, and recently I was inducted into the Hall of Fame last year for Marymount women's basketball.
Exactly. And I was like hoping you were going to bring that up because I was so shocked. I'm like, you are amazing because I see you basically once a week, so give my listeners a little background about our lovely little relationship that we have. Our relationship is in the Zumba classroom with the famous Tarek, and so it's just, when I see you, and like I said, every time I see you, I've learned something new about you, and you are the sweetest individual I've ever met in my life, for one, but to hang out with you it's just awesome. So when I learned about that, you've done this basketball, you got this business, and of course the first time I think I asked you about your business, it was like, oh, so when did you start your business? You're like, oh, I've been doing it for 7 years. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. Like I always tell people, you never know the world that they live in and what they've been doing. And so I was so excited, like I said, to get this opportunity to interview you and learn just a little bit more about you, because you have a whole bunch of things to talk about, and you have a lot to offer people. So, when you get out through college, you're in school and everything, and all these things are starting to work. But when you really decided to get into business, what made you jump into counseling business? It's a tough business, but it's, and it has its own uniqueness. So what really made you decide to go that route?
Well, kind of like I shared before, when I went to college, I really just wanted to play basketball, but I loved helping people too. And back in middle school, I actually was a peer helper, and it was kind of like a student mediator. And I remember being in a role where I had to kind of help resolve issues between students. And I thought, this is kind of fun. But I never thought I would necessarily make a career out of it. So when I went to college, it was all about basketball, but they're like, you got to declare a major. So I'm like, okay, well, I kind of like talking to people and I like writing. And the advisor said, okay, well, that sounds like psychology and English. She's like, English, you're going to have to do a lot of writing. Psychology, you'll get to talk and learn about people. So I picked that and got my psych degree. And after that, they said, well, if you want to be a counselor, you have to get your master's. And I thought, oh my gosh, really?
Like more school, right?
Yeah. And I really fought that process. I was like, hey, I did my time. I don't know why I have to go back. But I had a very strong mother who was big on education. My mom had 5 degrees, and so she set the tone for us to continue to pursue our education. So after I graduated, I was like, well, I'm just going to play professional ball, and that's it. And she said, okay, well, I'll give you a semester. You can go try out, do whatever you want. And I did that. I did some showcases, and it really didn't turn out the way I expected. So she said, are you ready to go back to school now? And I'm like, gosh, darn it. Okay, fine. So
oh, goodness.
I re-enrolled at Marymount, and I enrolled as a pastoral counseling student because I loved the counseling, but I didn't know how to counsel without telling people to pray or to believe in God. So I thought pastoral counseling program was going to be the best fit for me, and it turned out that it really was.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Of course, we, in the world we live in today, it seems, using the word God is like, oh my gosh, you can't do this, you can't do that. Anytime you have to fight about it in your school systems, you got to fight about it every day out here in public. You cannot say what you want to say without people being, disrespectful about your own beliefs, So I'm glad that you decided to go with the path that you believed in. And here it is 7 years later. It obviously showed that like you said, was the right way in the direction to go. So that when you, like I said, you've been in business for 7 years. So talk to me a little bit about some of the challenges you've been facing off and on throughout the 7 years.
Well, initially, I really didn't know what I was doing, but I had been working part-time at a couple practices. So I kind of knew the environment, I knew the structure and how, how to get clients and see them and do the whole therapy part, but I just didn't know how to start a practice. But I had a great mentor who is still mentoring and coaching me today. Her name is Kathy Bornoth, and she actually had her own practice. I worked for her down in Chantilly, Virginia. And she was just willing to sit down with me and answer all the questions I had with getting started. So I remember we went out to lunch and I had 1,000 questions and she answered all of them. The toughest challenge I had with getting started was just actually getting the reimbursement for payment, because I was able to transfer my current clients from my part-time job to my practice, but I didn't know how to get the reimbursement. So it took a while for me to find a billing system that worked. And then after 3 months, I finally got it to work. And then it just kind of took off from there. So I think the toughest thing was just figuring out how the whole insurance company worked with getting reimbursement. But after that, I was able to kind of branch out, and I did maybe a year and a half on my own, and then I started bringing on some other therapists and associates to work with me, and moved on to a larger office to where we could house more therapists, and that's where I am now.
Yeah, and that's phenomenal. And then I was listening to you, and the thing that I loved about what you're talking about there is you mentioned how mentoring and having mentorship there, available for you, that till this day you're still getting that. And that's a lot of the things that people miss and don't utilize in business, because they think, I've made it, I don't need that anymore. You need that consistently. We all need that as business owners. One thing I like too, that you also mentioned, the fact that, hey, I know my craft, I know what I'm doing, but there was other pieces that a lot of times we don't understand about business, but at least you had enough wherewithal to say, you know what, if I'm going to be successful at this, I need to get help. I need to figure out how this is going to work in order to continue to be successful. And those are the other pieces that I, as business owners and as me being a consultant as well, is that, you try to get people to understand how important it is to realize that you don't know everything, and it's okay that you don't know everything. And that you have to learn these processes of being what it takes to really be in a business if you want to continue to be successful. So, I think that the challenges you had weren't really challenges. It's just really just a part of the process. As we look at it now, I'm sure you say that, or think that after 7 years, I'm sure of going through that, saying, wow, it seemed like it was really hard, but 3 months, probably seemed like 3 years to you during that time frame, but I think it's amazing that, what you're doing is phenomenal. But talk, I guess, a little bit more about now the actual practice. You mentioned you had several different types of services that you provide in the beginning of the show. Dive into a couple of them and just kind of walk us through how the process would work with your clientele.
Sure. And kind of like I shared earlier, I do work with individuals, couples, and families and kids, adults on a variety of issues. Most of the time, I do see a lot of anxiety and depression, which seems to be the top two common reasons people are seeking therapy, just dealing with a lot of fears or uncertainty, and then just handling life stressors, which can kind of pile up and lead to depression. But most of our clients are dealing with that, and they range from a variety of ages, where the youngest I've seen was probably 4 years old, and the eldest is probably in their early 80s. And it's amazing because everyone kind of has their own struggles and own issues, and we're just there to kind of help them guide through life and pick the best decision possible to help them with their life circumstance. But I truly enjoy it, and it's rewarding to see when people, are able to overcome their issues.
Right. And, in the world we definitely live in today, I can see how you're saying that seem to have more and more people who are coming in with the depression and so forth, because we have so much stress in the world today. Kids can't be kids. Adults got way too much stress, on top of them because, the society's telling you got to do this, and that. And it's like, whatever happened to simplicity?
Yes, yes. Yeah, it is a lost art, and I think we take on so much in our lives, and we want to be, the hero in every area, and sometimes we just have to slow down to just live life instead of trying to please everyone else or trying to obtain certain titles that don't mean anything at the end of the day.
Amen. You got that right. But the thing I'm sitting here struggling with is that 4 years old, I can't even fathom
I know.
at 4 having that type of stress.
Yes.
I'm just sitting here like, wow, that's crazy.
Yes. Yeah, and sometimes it's just adjusting to the transitions where you'll see a lot of times kids are used to being at home and then they have to transition to a school environment or a daycare environment, and it's a stressful transition. And dealing with other people, especially if they're an only child or used to being with their parents, it can be very traumatic for them. So a lot of times that's what we see, that transition from being at home, daycare, or just being with mom and dad to struggling with how to interact with other kids who are loud and, active. And so a lot of kids have a hard time adjusting to that.
But do you think, I guess, in your professional opinion, that technology to some degree has ruined the normalcy of what, our children, what we used to have growing up? I guess me being in my 50s, of course, obviously things were different then, but I never felt like as a child that I had to worry about not just being a child.
Right.
Yeah. And even transitioning from, going from preschool to kindergarten to, middle school or whatever. To me, it was like something you look forward to. You love those processes, but we didn't have those pressures that these kids have today. So I guess, I just, like I said, I struggle with it in my mind to think that these kids today just have so many things on their plates at such a young age.
Right. They do. And I think, like you said, technology does play a huge role in the development of children. And they seem to just know so much more, so much faster than we do. And I think because they're exposed to a lot more early on and just, having access to iPads and cell phones and the internet, it's like they can gain as much information as they want. So I think a lot of times there's more expectations or difficulties with behavior just because kids have a lot of options now versus back then where it's like, hey, you're just going to go to school, you're just going to learn. And now they have the option to, well, can I stay home? Can I just go on the computer and figure it out myself? Well, why do I have to go to school, And so I think there are more struggles sometimes now with all the technology that we have versus, just maybe one or two options that we had growing up.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, like I said, the technology is great to some extent, but boy, I think it makes a lot of people very lazy as well. Because the brains are not being utilized, I think, in the full fashion. And I keep wondering one day what's going to happen when all of a sudden the internet is no longer existing.
Oh, wow. I know.
The cloud's not going to be there anymore. It's like, what are people going to do?
Exactly. Yes. Everyone would be coming in for depression. Yes.
Right. You're going to have enough seats. Okay.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. But I know it's not a laughing matter, but to some degree, I just find that people have lost that sense of common sense. The sense of the ability that you can do certain things without feeling like you have to, get on your phone, look something up, just think a little bit, the brain does function that way. That is the purpose of it, so I just, like I said, I don't make fun of it, but I just find that, I guess a part of it is because I've been able to grow up in eras and times where, we had to think, and then now we've got all these other things that we were learning in the process of, each generation. So I guess that's really how it's supposed to be done. But at the same token, I keep wondering one day, well, even when we thought, what was it, back in 2000, when we thought, or 1999, we thought everything was going to, stop, the world was going to stop, And I'm thinking, well, back at that time frame, we didn't have what we had today, but I'm like, okay, why are you buying all this stuff if the world's coming to an end?
Exactly. Right.
You're not going to take it with you, and the technology is not going to save you at that point. So, oh, just amazing. But I do have a couple more questions for you too, that before we kind of get towards the end of this interview. But I guess I would like to know, there's so many other people out here in the world who want to be a business owner. What great advice would you give them about becoming a business owner?
I think you really have to make sure you have a passion for what you want to pursue. It should be something that you would want to do even if you don't get paid for it, because I think that's going to give you the true drive, and you want to have a purpose behind it, whether it's to help people or to make a difference in the future, or, to just create some kind of important product or even technology that will just help better people's lives. But you want to make sure that you have a purpose behind it and that you're driven for the right reasons. And then you just want to find people who are doing what you want to do. I think, like we talked about earlier, the mentorship is huge. And a lot of times I think people try to go about it alone, and you don't have to do it all by yourself. So if you have people in life where you want to be, I would sit down and ask them questions and get a game plan together to figure out how you can do what they're doing.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. Plan. My big thing, do a business plan. It's not going to kill you. It's a revolving document. You use it as you continue to grow through business. And it's really essentially the same thing. Everybody has a different way of how they think a business plan should be done, but planning it out will save you so much more. You won't have these headaches that you will eventually have down the road if you don't plan it out properly. So absolutely agree with you.
Yeah, I think having a mentor, it's kind of like someone who's been through the minefield already. So they can lay out a path for you that's going to be more successful than you trying to create it all on your own.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, because we're getting close to the end, I want you to tell the listeners how they can get a hold of you and get your services if they need them.
Sure. Like you said, we are located in Woodbridge, Virginia, and our office name is Benjamin Counseling Center. You can go to our website, which is benjamincounseling.com. And then we also have a Facebook page, which is Benjamin Counseling Center, where I often have different resources and updates and different tools that we're using in our practice to help improve people's lives. And that's our slogan, actually, Benjamin Counseling Center, empowering, encouraging, and improving lives.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on my show tonight. Do you have any last words?
I would just encourage everyone to just dream big. And if you have a dream and a goal, you just put the work ethic behind it and find people that can help you, and the world is yours.
Amen to that one. Again, like I said, I really, truly appreciate you coming on my show tonight. I know you have a very busy schedule. And for everyone else, remember, we are on iHeartRadio every Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Until the next time, you all enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you and good night.
Good night, everyone. We will be back next Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Follow us on Spreaker, www.spreaker.com/user/WSBI. View our new WSBI website anytime at www.wsbillc.com and on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram.